Can everyone hear me? Perfect. I asked that question once at a church weekend away that I was running in the Lake District, and there was a bloke at the back who went, "Yeah, I can, unfortunately." So I'm really sorry if you don't want to hear me, but you are going to hear me. What a joy. So, hello everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ems, and we've been coming to this church for nearly 2 years. But they're COVID years, so they don't really count. So it feels like we've been coming for 6 weeks. I don't know if you've joined us during COVID, but if you have, let's hug at the end, because we can now. It's really great to see you. If you're here in person, well done for being here. Well done for getting through all the traffic. And it's great to have you online. Let's just wave to everyone online. Turn around, wave to everyone online, say hello. There you are. There's some really special people joining us today. First time, we've got some new babies in the house. So come on. We've also got some babies at home who aren't here. So hello to you, small people. And new mums and dads, we really bless you in Jesus' name. Students, creative people, people who like to doodle, people who struggle to concentrate during sermons. On the 2 white tables over there and over there with the lamps on, there are some kind of colouring sheets. So if you're the kind of person who, I'd really like to listen, but I really struggle, go and get one of those now. There's pens, there's paper, go and do that. And then you can, as I'm talking, you've got something to do. So that helps you listen. So please feel free, stand up and go now. That's totally cool. So some people going, well done. Get one for your friends, get one for your family. It's cool. So I'm going to talk to you today about peace. And the title of my talk, which is hopefully going to come up in a bit, I've got Dan's over there, but he's rushing back. Rushing. I love it. Our creative team are brilliant. But they're literally in 7 places at once, aren't they? So Dan is going to put the title of my talk up, Living in Peace, Not in Pieces. Okay. So we're talking today about what it means to have peace. So I don't know about you, I don't know what it is that makes you feel unpeaceful. When you feel bombarded by worry, what is your go-to solution? Well, in the last few years, there's been a huge surge of writing and thinking and research about what the world tells us is our increasing levels of anxiety. But perhaps anxiety isn't a very new thing at all. If you go into Scripture, it's not a very long time before you discover some fairly anxious people. And Dan, there's a next slide on that. But these men and women did not suffer with anxiety because they were a long way from God. They didn't suffer with anxiety because they were outside of God's purposes. And I think that's a really interesting thing to remember. People like Moses and Martha and Naomi and Nahum and Esther and Elijah all went through times of anxiety. I could name loads and loads more. I just wrote a few for you on the screen. I didn't literally write them on the screen. I did a PowerPoint and then I put that on the screen. All of those people had moments, didn't they? They had days, they had weeks, or maybe even years of times where they felt worried. And I find that massively comforting. I don't know about you. And there are many lenses through which we could look at the passage that I'm talking on today, but the hook I'm hanging my coat on today is the hook of peace. And Rick's going to read that for us in a sec. And as Rick reads this, I'd love you to think about and hone in on the bits about peace particularly. It's one of those famous sets of verses in the Bible that literally each verse could be a bumper sticker on its own, or each verse could be a Christian t-shirt. There's so many incredible verses here. So I'm deliberately not looking at every single one of them because I don't want you to go home at 3 o'clock this afternoon. So I'm only talking about 3 things, don't worry. And then we're going to watch a video, and then I'm going to speak. So we're going to have Rick first, and then a video, and then I'm going to do a bit of a chat. So we're going to read from Philippians 4, verses 1 to 13. Rick's going to do it in his best speaking voice. So maybe you can find it in a Bible. If you would like a Bible, there's some at the back. If you've got it on your phone, fabulous. And if not, you've got it on the screen. So you've actually got 3 different ways to read it, and you've got 1 way to hear it. So hopefully it's going to go in. Thanks, Rick.
Wonderful. Here we go then, Philippians 4. Therefore, my brothers and sisters, you whom I love and long for, my joy and crown, stand firm in the Lord in this way, dear friends. I plead with Euodia and I plead with Syntyche, say it with confidence, to be in the same mind in the Lord. Yes, and I ask you, my true companion, help these women, since they have contended by my side in the cause of the gospel, along with Clement and the rest of my co-workers, whose names are in the book of life. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I am saying this because I am in need. For I have learnt of the content whatever the circumstances, to be content, in whatever circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I do all this through him who gives me strength.
Thank you, mate. So before we delve into the talk a little bit, I wanted to show you a film. This is from the Bible Project, and it's a really brilliant film that helps us look at the story arc of peace across the Old Testament and the New Testament. And it says a lot that I would really like to say, but it says it a bit faster and with pictures, so that's a win. So this is peace. Is it ready, Dan? Oh, don't you love tech people? Yes, mate. Right, this is shalom. Go.
The word peace is common in most languages. People can talk about peace treaties or times of peace. It means the absence of war. And in the Bible, the word peace can refer to the absence of conflict, but it also points to the presence of something better in its place. In the Old Testament, the Hebrew word for peace is shalom. And in the New Testament, the Greek word is eirene. The most basic meaning of shalom is complete or whole. The word can refer to a stone that has a perfect, whole shape with no cracks. It can also refer to a completed stone wall that has no gaps and no missing bricks. Shalom refers to something that's complex with lots of pieces that's in a state of completeness, wholeness. It's like Job, who says his tents are in a state of shalom because he counted his flock and no animals are missing. This is why shalom can refer to a person's well-being. Like when David visited his brothers on the battlefield, he asked about their shalom. The core idea is that life is complex, full of moving parts and relationships and situations, and when any of these is out of alignment or missing, your shalom breaks down. Life is no longer whole, it needs to be restored. In fact, that's the basic meaning of shalom when you use it as a verb. To bring shalom literally means to make complete or restore. So Solomon brings shalom to the unfinished temple when he completes it. Or if your animal accidentally damages your neighbor's field, you shalom them by giving them a complete repayment for their loss. You take what's missing and you restore it to wholeness. The same goes for human relationships. In the book of Proverbs, to reconcile and heal a broken relationship is to bring shalom. And when rival kingdoms make shalom in the Bible, it doesn't just mean they stop fighting, it also means they start working together for each other's benefit. This state of shalom is what Israel's kings were supposed to cultivate, and it rarely happened. So the prophet Isaiah, he looked forward to a future king, a prince of shalom. And his reign would bring shalom with no end. A time when God would make a covenant of shalom with his people and make right all wrongs and heal all that's been broken. This is why Jesus' birth in the New Testament was announced as the arrival of eirene. Remember, that's the Greek word for peace. Jesus came to offer his peace to others, like when he said to his followers, "My peace I give to you all." The apostles claimed that Jesus made peace between messed up humans and God when he died and rose from the dead. The idea is that he restored to wholeness the broken relationship between humans and their creator. This is why the Apostle Paul can say Jesus himself is our eirene. He was the whole complete human that I am made to be but have failed to be. And now he gives me his life as a gift. And this means that Jesus' followers are now called to create peace. Paul instructed local churches to keep their unity through the bond of peace, which requires humility and patience and bearing with others in love. Becoming people of peace means participating in the life of Jesus, who reconciled all things in heaven and earth, restoring peace through his death and resurrection. So peace takes a lot of work, because it's not just the absence of conflict. True peace requires taking what's broken and restoring it to wholeness, whether it's in our lives, our relationships, or in our world. And that's the rich biblical concept of peace.
So, he said quite a lot there, didn't he? I don't know whether you got all of that, but what I'd love you to do is just turn to the person next to you and ask them one question. What did you get from that about peace? What was the image or the phrase? Just go. Okay, so I know quite a lot of that he speaks about. Things that I loved was the picture that went throughout that of the completed wall and of God bringing back into completeness and wholeness things that have been broken. I love the phrase shalom or shalom and the phrase eirene, bringing peace. So, I'm going to ask you a question. Hands up who sometimes feels unpeaceful. Okay, good. Well, it's not good that you do, but well done for responding is what I meant. You see, we all do, don't we? We all have times where we feel unpeaceful. So what is it that stops us from experiencing God's peace? And how do we lose our peace? I'm sure you've got lots of personal examples. And just a little alert today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about mental well-being today. I'm going to be talking about some aspects of our mental health. And I'm praying that that has a really healing and hopeful effect on your heart. We're going to look at 3 things that Paul says in this passage that can rob us of peace. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is disagreement. And then we're going to look at anxiety. And then we're going to look at trying to do life by ourselves. So how many things are we looking at? 3. Well done. Okay, so everyone say number 1. Okay, this is number 1. We're going to zoom in. In verses 2 and 3, Rick read some very complicated names. Don't know whether you noticed. Euodia and Syntyche is how I say it. I don't know if that's correct. I don't know if we've got any Greek scholars in the house who are saying that that's right. Gareth, would you say that? Nobody knows how to pronounce it. It's ancient Greek. So I'm pronouncing it like that. And I think you'll find I'm right. Euodia and Syntyche. So I don't know what you feel like or what it feels like for you when you know someone doesn't like you. But for me, it's really tricky. And I'm really aware of it, and I kind of wear it. So I've been to like events and things where I've known that there's somebody there who's like fully giving me evils in the corner. And it's a horrible feeling to feel like somebody doesn't like you. But it's also a horrible feeling to not like someone else. It's a tricky feeling, isn't it? And maybe there's somebody in your life at the moment who is really hard for you to get on with. It might be somebody at work. Hopefully it's not someone in your immediate family, but it might be. I'm saying that because I've got my dad and my stepmom, and John's parents are here today. Love you all. But from the off in this passage, it was clear that these two women were not getting on. Years ago, I was invited to be part of a board of quite senior Christians, and I was quite surprised to be invited because I was quite a junior person at that time, and everyone else in the room was like quite senior, quite important in churches. And then there was little old me. And I was super excited, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to hang out with these people. And then what happened was I realized that there were some people in this room who did not like each other. And I was sitting there going, is anyone else feeling the real tension in this room? This is super awkward. And I remember speaking to a really wise friend of mine, and she said this phrase to me. She said, one of the marks of Christian maturity is how quickly people take offense. Quickly or slowly, I guess. And I felt that I was kind of watching people take offense in the room. And I remember going home and being really offended about the offense. And so I was telling people, I just think it's really awful that these people are taking offense. And my friend Rachel said, yeah, isn't it amazing that as a mark of Christian maturity is how people get offended? And I was like, oh, you're talking about me, aren't you? I thought you were talking about the people in the room, and I could feel really good about that, but actually you were challenging me. Thanks, Rach. You see, I was taking offense because other people were offending me because they were offending each other. And I think that sometimes we can get ourselves, oh, is that not working? Thank you. Is this working? No. Blessings. Thank you. Sometimes we can get ourselves in a bit of a knot, can't we? And I have said this actual phrase before I've realized the irony of it. I wish that person wouldn't talk about others behind their back. Is anyone seeing any irony there? It's like saying, will you stop shouting to your child? Or don't snatch as you pull something out of their hand. We're going to look at this argument between two faithful women of God, Euodia and Syntyche. Now, we don't know much about them, except that they have brilliantly difficult names, that they were leaders, that they were people who'd worked with Paul, and they're godly women, but for some reason, they've fallen out. Now, scholars argue about what their names mean, but I found a couple of different names. Now, Euodia's name could mean sweet fragrance. Imagine that, walking into the room, hi, my name's Sweet Fragrance. What's your name? And Syntyche means someone who's got a lot to say. So I don't know who caused the argument. Could it have been sweet fragrance? I smell better than you. Or could it have been, I've got a lot to say, and I'm going to say it. Now, I don't know, but we know that their disagreement was not private. Because whether Paul was made aware of it during an earlier visit or someone had written him a letter to say these women were not getting on, we don't know. But it wasn't private. And I want you to pause for a minute. Because you may think that the disagreement that you have with somebody or your feelings about that woman or that man are private. But the way you talk about them in your home or in your heart could actually be damaging. Not just for you, but the people around you. And it was like this with Euodia and Syntyche because they weren't in harmony. And Paul had noticed and other people had noticed and it wasn't okay. Now, this happens. It even happens in churches, doesn't it? We have different thoughts, different opinions, different ideas. And Paul had decided that this disagreement was not going to be left just to work itself out. Because he said to his friend, help these women. Now, I don't know what that person had to do, maybe sit them down and mediate between them and help them work out their grievances to bring shalom, to bring completeness. And hopefully they did work it out, but we don't actually know. They're not mentioned again. So, brothers and sisters, we're called to live in unity, aren't we? But the enemy doesn't like unity very much, because unity is when the Holy Spirit gets to do what he wants to do. And so what happens is the enemy tries to wind people up about small things in meetings. Has anyone ever noticed that? You're sitting in a meeting, it's completely calm, and someone gets really angry about the fact that the water's slightly warm. Or someone gets cross or offended about something that actually they're not very cross or offended by. And they're surprised at how they're responding. Years ago, John and I were trying to find a new church. And we visited a tiny one that met in a little school. And halfway through the service, a man got up. He was called Alan, and he kind of interrupted the person who was leading the service. And he apologized to the whole church for his behavior at a meeting earlier on that week. Now, I didn't know this congregation, and nor did John, but we were fascinated to see what was going to happen next. This bloke basically just interrupted and was like, "Oh, I'm really sorry, I was well out of order, and I shouldn't have said that, and I shouldn't have done that, and I'm really sorry." And we were like, "Oh, okay." And there was there going to be this massive awkward pause? Would someone cry or storm out? And John and I just kind of looked at each other. You know how you give each other a side eye when you're a bit awkward? And we just felt a bit nervous. And we wondered what was going to happen and how the guy at the front was going to handle it. And imagine that you are leading a service and a guy comes up and starts, interrupting you and saying that. It's not on your service sheet, is it? Yeah, it doesn't say on your service sheet, pause whilst tearful man interrupts you to share apology. So the guy leading the service is in this really awkward position. But he did this beautiful and brave thing. He said, "Well, if Alan has upset anybody in here, please can you go to the back now and give him a hug? And can you receive his love and offer him your forgiveness?" Wow. So a couple of people went, "Yeah, all right, yeah, I'll go to the back." And they went to the back and they hugged Alan, and Alan had a cry, and his wife Marion had a cry, and we joined the church. Now, why did we join the church? We joined the church because we saw authentic love and authentic forgiveness on the first day that we were there. So we were like, yeah, these guys will get us and we'll get them. Now, don't worry, I'm not saying, so get up here if you've offended anyone. Join us on stage to share. We're not doing that today. But maybe there is somebody that you need to say sorry to. Maybe there's somebody who you've really bugged or has really bugged you. And perhaps God is kind of pushing your button as I'm talking and you're going, "Oh, really? I don't want to text them." Yeah, you do. Because you don't want to let something get in the way of God's best for you or for them. And maybe you've harbored some thoughts over this last week even, and God's talking to you right now, and you're going, "Oh, Ems, could you not have spoken about something else?" No, I'm very sorry I couldn't. Everyone say number 2. Thank you. The second thing that Paul talks about that steals our peace is anxiety. Now, no one wakes up in the morning and decides, "I really want to be anxious today," do they? No one opens the curtains and hopes they're going to have a day full of worry and fear. But sometimes anxiety comes in anyway. And it can be sparked by a feeling or an event or someone airing a text that you've sent. It arrives without our permission, and it's often the thief of our peace. And Paul says here, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God." So what does he mean? Well, anxiety takes many forms, doesn't it? It's our body's natural response to stress. It's that feeling of dread that something might happen. The first day of school, A job interview, giving a speech, doing a test, health problems, all sorts of things can cause even the most confident person to feel fearful. Even Jesus got anxious. We only need to read the account of him in the Garden of Gethsemane before he died to realize that he was experiencing deep anxiety at that moment. Perhaps it comforts us to remember that the disciples who were in the boat, even when Jesus was asleep, were feeling anxious. The Son of God is right there with them, and they are still afraid. We live in a world, don't we, that runs from pain. But like any good doctor will tell you, pain is trying to tell you something. It's trying to communicate something to you. It's trying to say something is wrong. I went for a run a few months ago and I pulled my calf muscle. It took a few days to heal, and then I did it again recently. Those of you who know me well, I was moaning about it for weeks because I couldn't walk very well. But it was trying to tell me something. It was trying to say, warm up better. Don't try and go on a run as soon as you get out of bed. You idiot. Try and look after your body. And anxiety can be similar, because its purpose is to tell us something about how we feel and what we think. So what are your anxious thoughts trying to say? Anxiety looks different, doesn't it, depending on the person experiencing it. And we also will feel anxious for different reasons. You see, something that might cause me to feel upset and unpeaceful might be a total breeze for you, and you're like, why are you bothered about that? That's so easy. But for me, it's not easy, or vice versa. And you see, those Bible characters that we mentioned earlier weren't all experiencing the same fears, were they? Many people might express anxiety as feeling stuck inside a set of thoughts, or feeling stuck inside a set of behaviors, and that sense of being trapped, unsure of how to feel differently. But the Word of God isn't minimizing that. It's not telling us off for experiencing it. It's helping us learn to deal with it. So Paul says, in every situation. In other words, every time you feel anxiety rise up within you, talk to God. Communicate it with him. Don't imagine it's nothing. Don't sit on it. Take it to God. And it uses the word petition here, which is a posh word for asking more than once. Don't worry, it doesn't mean you have to get 100 signatures to go and see God. It means every time you struggle, present your requests, how you feel to God. I find it amazing that God is never bored of me. I sometimes get bored of me. We sometimes get bored of ourselves, don't we? We're like, oh, did you ever do your own head in? Do you ever find yourself going, shush, be quiet? Maybe it's just me. But God never says that. The only time he says quiet is when he's trying to soothe us, when he says, peace, be still. But he'll never say, shush, I've had enough of you. And we say that to ourselves, don't we? Present your request to God. So what does that look like in plain English? Well, it means if you feel sad, start with that. God, I feel sad. If you feel low, start with that. God, I feel low today. And if you can't speak, bring in your sighing or your tears. Elsewhere in the Bible, in places like Galatians 6:2, Paul reminds us to bear one another's burdens. And that just means hang out with each other, lean into what's going on, try and be a good friend. Often, people need time, don't they? If they're feeling anxious, they need time to process it. They don't always want to talk about it, but they want to know that you care. They want to know that they're loved. And maybe that's all you can do right now if one of your friends is anxious, just to be present. Sometimes someone who's anxious may sit on those feelings for a bit, and they might try and shut them down or hide from them. Or they might even be ashamed of them or feel guilty. And they might disassociate from them and think, I don't even want to think that I think like that. And they might try and alleviate pain in another way. So classic things that we do when we're anxious is that we try and distract ourselves. So we work a bit harder, or we watch a bit more Netflix, or we try and be a bit more busy. We distract ourselves. But everyone is so different in how they handle it. Maybe you've been feeling anxiety well up in you recently, and you have squished it and squashed it. And maybe you feel a bit guilty because there's people around you who you know who aren't anxious at all in your same circumstances, and your anxiety is unwelcome, and you don't know how to delete it. If I did a poll right now, which I'm not going to do, by the way, but if I did a poll right now of everybody in this room and I said, who has felt anxious about someone or something this week, I wonder what I would find. My gut feeling, and from my work, is that most hands would go up. Why is that? It's because we're human. You and I are human. And whatever we feel worried about or lack of peace about, I think we need to take Paul's advice today. Take some time out. Pray. Stop. And ask God to help us. Listen in to what our body is trying to say. Give that to God. Share that burden with a trusted person. Get some help. Because Jesus didn't come so that we could stay stuck. He came to give us life to the full, didn't he? Paul says that as a result of this, of going to God, we get this, the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, that will guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. And I love the Message version of this, which is on the screen. It's super practical. It says, don't fret or worry. Instead of worrying, pray. Let petitions and praises shape your worries into prayers, letting God know your concerns. And before you know it, a sense of God's wholeness, everything coming together for good, will come and settle you down. What a prayer to pray. Is that what you need, for God to settle you down? Not to tell you to shush, but to tell you he's there. For his wholeness over you. That's what I want too. You see, God's peace isn't like a wishy-washy thing. It's not about rainbows and doves and gentle music all the time. And we do it a disservice when we think of it only like that. It's also like a hench bodyguard outside a club who won't let anyone in who's not on the list. It's tough and muscly and strong, and it guards your heart and mind and says to anxious thoughts, you're barred. Imagine that. God's peace standing there and saying, you're not coming in. Your name's not down. That's what God's peace can be like. That nothing missing, nothing broken, shalom kind of peace that we saw earlier in the film. Everyone say, number 3. Well done. The third thing that robs us of peace is trying to do things alone. Verse 13 says, I can do all things through him who gives me what? Strength. Do you know what? There's an opposite to that. I think I sometimes specialize in the opposite of this. There are times when we rush around exhausted because we haven't offloaded or we haven't done our whole to-do list. We're tired, busy, resentful of the world. We look at others watching TV with their feet up as we're single-handedly trying to save the whole of creation by tea time. Maybe that's just me. But as a result of that, we have this huge lack of peace. And we become irritable and anxious. And we start disagreeing with people. Like all 3 of the things that Paul's telling us happen. And if you were to isolate the most important part of that phrase, the 2 words that jump out to me are the words, through him. You see, it doesn't say, I can do all things because I'm qualified. Or I can do all things because I study hard. Or I can do all things because I've got brilliant friends. It doesn't even say, I can do all things because I'm a Christian. It's because Jesus is Jesus. that we can do all things, like Ian was telling us a couple of weeks ago. Years ago, I was involved in a band, and the bass player worked with a pop singer. She doesn't do very much anymore, but anyone remember Jessie J? Anyone remember her? Well, my mate Phil was her bass player, and she's gone a bit quiet now. But anyway, Phil came up to Manchester because she was doing a gig, and basically he rang me and he said, "Do you want a free ticket?" And I'm like, "Well, okay." And I got in through him. I got into that gig because I knew his name. So I went to the door, and the scary bouncer on the door, and I went, "My mate Phil said I could come in." And he went, "Yeah, in you come." That felt cool. I'm not very cool, but I felt cool that day. I got in through him. And that's what Paul is saying here. It's through Jesus that we get to go in. It's not because of who we are. It's not because of who we know. It's not because of how cool we look. It's through Jesus. And I love the fact that Paul is saying this at a time in his life where he is in prison. He's in the toughest place, and yet God gives him strength. I'm going to talk more about that tonight. I'm actually doing a different talk tonight because I like to make things really hard for myself. But I'm doing a talk tonight on how we can rejoice, copy godly people, and practice contentment. So if you need to hear a little bit more on this, you can come back later. So, some good news, and I'm coming into land with this. God's peace is available now. You don't have to wait for it. It's for you now. In what could be a very complex situation. It's available whether you're well or you're ill. It's available if you're unemployed or retired, or whether you're in the best job you've ever had. It's available if you're a fully fledged Alpha course leader with a PhD in eschatology, or whether you've never said the name of Jesus except in a swear word. The peace that Jesus gives us is available to us when we are at our most unpeaceful. I'm going to say that again because that's a really good sentence. The peace that Jesus gives us is available to us when we are at our most unpeaceful. That's why it exists. Did you know that God didn't invent peace because he needed it? He invented peace because we do. So do you want it? Do you want peace in your life? Jesus said this in John 14:27. "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." So, just to summarize those 3 points that we've had today, we can have peace over our relationships in what we say. We can have peace over our minds in what we think. And we can have peace over our actions in what we do. Now, on both sides of the room, I've got little tables, and you can see that there's a yellow bowl on the table. And in the yellow bowls, there are pieces of Lego. And the pieces of Lego are for you to take away as a reminder of what we talked about today, and the film that you saw earlier about the wall. And if the anxiety or stress in a disagreement is something that's really bugging you at the moment, I'd really encourage you during this next couple of songs to come and grab a piece of Lego. Pop it in your pocket. Take it with you. Help it to be a reminder that God is with you in the situation that you're in. That he's quietening your heart but not telling you to shush. That he loves who you are in the season that you're in. But pray that prayer as you touch that piece of Lego. I want nothing missing, nothing broken in my mind, in my relationships, or in my actions. At the end, if anyone's interested, I have got some books. One is called Insecurity, 2 words, Living a Confident Life. And all these books are free today. So this morning we looked at 3 things. We looked at ways to lose our peace. And we looked firstly at arguments, do you remember? And then we looked at anxiety briefly. And then the third thing we looked at was trying to do life by ourselves. So there are three things that were in that passage that Paul basically says is not a good idea if you want to be peaceful. Okay. So tonight we're going to look at how we keep our peace. And what I mean by that is how we stay peaceful. So who's up for learning how to be more peaceful? Does anyone need a bit more peace in their lives? Yeah, me too. I need to be more peaceful. My kids will tell you that. My husband will probably tell you that. My friends will tell you that. I need to be more peaceful. And that's one of the reasons I'm really grateful that I'm here, because I know that when I'm not feeling peaceful, I can text people. And I often do, and Gareth and Lizzie will testify to this. When I'm not feeling great, I'm like, Gareth and Lizzie, this is really hard. Can you help me? Can you pray? And guess what they do? Okay, so we're not meant to do life on our own, are we? So I'm super grateful for you guys. Just saying. Okay. I love a little love fest. It's so cool, isn't it? So verse 4 says, rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Now, when I was a little girl, we used to sing a song. Gareth is laughing because he's probably the only person the same age as me, or who gets this song. But we used to sing a song that went on forever, and it was like a round, and you started off, rejoice in the Lord always, and then the next team would go, and the next team would go, and eventually someone would die. But what's really amazing about this verse is we don't actually use the word rejoice anymore. You don't walk up to someone in the street and say, rejoice, I'm here. It's not a phrase that we use. It's not a word that we use outside of a Jane Austen novel. Some of you are going, yes, I know this. Mr. Darcy writes a letter to Elizabeth Bennet. Could you possibly expect me to rejoice in the inferiority of your circumstances? I know. But Paul also uses it. So why and what does it mean? Well, it means this: to feel or show great happiness. So actually, what Paul is saying is, be happy deep down. But in case we didn't get it the first time, he says, oh, by the way, again I say, be happy deep down. Because it's almost like the people that he's writing to need to hear it twice. So for us today, maybe we need to hear it twice from God too. It's like, it's okay to be happy. Did you hear me? I said it's okay to be happy. That's what Paul is saying. He's saying it twice. Now, Paul is not in some coffee shop, sipping on a pumpkin spice soy latte, eating a vegan brownie as he's saying this. I just want to put it out there. He's in a Roman prison with a cold stone floor. Somebody's really enjoying that. They're like, oh, I love a pumpkin spice latte. I'm fully down with that, yeah. But he's in a prison, okay? He's in this cold stone floor prison. There's no windows in a Roman prison. There's dirty prisoners. There's no head and shoulders, okay? I'm going Roman dandruff here. There's rubbish food. There's no beds. It's a horrible, horrible environment. There's no fluffy socks and Haagen-Dazs here. And yet he's able to preach peace. I find that pretty nuts. He's able to tell us to rejoice in a place where actually, if we went to visit him, we'd be like, ooh, I can't rejoice here. But he can, because he knows something that we don't know. I think the first thing that he is teaching us here is what he's focusing in on. Because Paul had learned how to be happy in the direst of circumstances, hadn't he? To focus on heaven and the people of God and the needs of others. And I find that kind of peace massively beautiful and challenging. And if I'm honest, I don't think our modern day peace really stands a chance around that kind of peace. Because we feel fully injured, or maybe this is just me, we feel injured when the Wi-Fi goes down. Yeah? Anyone else get really stroppy when they're like, I've got no bars. There's no bars here. I'll stand on a chair, you know. Or when the dishwasher leaks, we get really grumpy. Maybe some of you don't have a dishwasher, I'm really sorry. I get cross when my dishwasher leaks. So what is it that Paul is asking us to focus on? So I want you to look at verse 8 if you've got it in front of you. Look at verse 8. He says this, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. So this passage, this tiny little bit of the Bible, do you remember that character who just used to go, yeah, whatever. This is like the whatever bit of the Bible, except it's a really cool thing. Because it's like whatever is noble, whatever is true, whatever is right, whatever is pure. It's a bit like a rap, isn't it? Don't worry, I'm not going to rap. I'm not that cool. But he's telling us what to focus on. Why is he doing that? Well, I think he knows that what we think about affects our mood and how we feel. So do you know that it's really possible to be in a great place and nothing to go wrong in your world, but something to switch in your brain and suddenly you feel rubbish? Anyone else? Okay, so nothing happens. It's not like someone phones you and says, I really hate you. You say something to yourself and you change your own mood. Can I have some nods in the room if that happens? Okay, good, not just me. Okay, awesome, brilliant. So our feelings follow what we think, okay? Now, I know you know this because you're all clever people, but sometimes it's helpful to say something really simple, isn't it? So you copy what your mind is doing. Your mind does something and you tend to agree with it. Sometimes your mind is playing tricks. Just saying. Paul has learnt here that if you follow your thoughts, sometimes your thoughts will lead you to negativity. So he's saying, don't follow them. Choose something different. Did you know you can choose your thoughts? You don't have to think the thoughts that are in your head already. You can choose to bin them and start again. Now, I used to work in well-being in schools, and I used to tell kids this, teenagers often, and I'd say, do you know you can choose your thoughts? You can choose to change your thinking. And they'd look at me like, what are you talking about? What? Say it again. I didn't get it. Say it again. And I'd say you can choose your thoughts. You don't have to think the thoughts that you're thinking about yourself. No, you can have different ones. Mind-blowing. Mind blown. But it's totally true. And Paul got this concept. He totally got it. And this is the kind of guiding principle. I don't know if anybody knows about CBT, but it's the guiding principle behind cognitive behavior therapy, which was developed by this guy, Aaron Beck, who actually died earlier this month. I don't know whether you saw it. But he developed it in the 1960s. Paul developed it quite a long time before. Okay? He's advocating here spiritual CBT. Okay? Hundreds of years before Dr. Beck came up with it, he's saying, guess what, guys? If you think about noble and lovely and happy and right and helpful and wholesome and nutritious and kind and worthy and beautiful thoughts, guess what? You will feel happier. Okay? Sounds really basic when you say it like that. But if you and I are feeling rubbish, it's quite hard to change our minds, isn't it? It's quite hard to make ourselves feel better. So where is your focus today as we start looking through this passage? If you've been pretty miserable this week, I would suggest it might be because you're focusing your mind on some pretty miserable stuff. Who would agree with that statement? If you feel miserable, often it's because we're thinking about something miserable. I'm going to give you an example of a time in my life that's really precious to me where the opposite of this happened. So the day that my mum was told she was going to die was not a massively happy day for me. We were in the Christie Hospital and the consultant came in and gave us the results of the many types of cancer that she was suffering with at that time. And we were in a kind of weird room that was curtained off so that there were two other people in the room behind curtains. So it wasn't a private space to hear that kind of news. And I was with my dad, and my mum, and that was just us three. And then there was another lady in the next sort of wing, next cubicle, and then imagine another curtain and another lady. And all three of those women were told pretty much the same thing at the same time. And there was no privacy between those curtains. So imagine the room. It's not the greatest place to be at that time. So the first lady was told, the prognosis is pretty bad. We're not able to do anything. We're going to give you palliative care. You've not got very long. And she screamed. She screamed. And it was like an animal scream. It was like a pain scream. And the only other time I've heard a scream like that was in a labour ward quite a long time before. It's not a nice scream. And the next lady was told, and she kicked off, she swore, she was kicking chairs, she was just angry, and her husband was angry, and there was a lot of anger. And I guess I was kind of quite interested at this point of how are you going to react? Are we going to be told the same thing? Now, my mum was a crispy, she loved Jesus, she was an amazing person, but she was human. So I was kind of going, this will be really interesting. And I was getting my heart ready because I was like, maybe you've brought us in here because you're going to say the same thing to us. But we'd watched number one, or we'd heard number one, we'd heard number two. And do you know what my mum did? She started humming, "Bless the Lord, O my soul." That's what she did in that moment. That's pretty nuts, isn't it? And we carried on humming that song in 3-part harmony, because my dad's a pretty good singer. He went for the bass line. I went high. And we wheeled her out. She was in a wheelchair at that stage. We wheeled her out through the Christie, and there's these long corridors that kind of have a bit of a slope on them. And I was kind of like holding her, and I was like, wow, we've just experienced the peace of God. We've experienced the peace of God in a crazy situation because of what we're choosing to focus on. We're choosing to focus on the fact that my mum is going to be healed. Not right now, but she's going to be healed. And that's a really beautiful experience to go through. So are you panicking or are you praying? What are you focusing in on? What is it that you're choosing to rest your head on? Secondly, I'm going to talk about copying godly people. I think this makes us more peaceful, and I think this is what Paul's trying to get at in this next bit. I don't know about you, but sometimes I struggle not to emulate people that I see on TV, or Snapchat, or TikTok. Not that I'm on Snapchat. I'm not down with those kind of kids. But the popular person that you know in your uni or in the office, sometimes we want to be like them, don't we? We want to mimic them. We want to be like, I want to be as funny as him, or I want to have, his skateboard, or whatever it is. And Paul encouraged his friends with this. He says in verse 9, whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. So when I got to uni, I went to church the first week, and it was the first time I'd ever been to church without my parents. Yeah, I remember that feeling, going to church for the first time, and it's quite strange. And I realized I could call myself any name. I was like, wow, I could totally reinvent myself. I could be called Dana if I wanted to. And maybe I could tell people that I was studying German with astrophysics and that I was a part-time chauffeur, because no one would know. And they paired me with this third-year person called Becca. And they gave me this little card with her name on and her mobile number. And then I was waiting for Becca. And what they do at the uni that I went to, they have different people and they pair a third year with a first year, and then you read the Bible with that person. And I thought it was great, brilliant, great idea. I signed up. And I arrived, I know you can't imagine this, but I was a bit of an outlandish dresser at university. So I'm there, I've got my yellow flares on, I'm wearing platform boots, original 1970s vintage. I've got a pink fur coat on, not real fur, because what's pink? Blue hair. I'm wearing quite a lot of eye makeup and orange lipstick. And I remember this particularly because I then met Becca. Now, Becca had been dressed by a committee from Marks and Spencer's in the 1980s. Now, if you go on Depop, that's all back in. And it's all what people are wearing. But in those days, it said, "You're different to me, and I'm different to you." And I don't know who was more disappointed, but I think it was her. But she had to be like a Christian. She had to look like she was pleased to meet me. But everything in her was going, "Oh my gosh, look at her." And do you know what? It was one of those incredible moments in my life where I really wanted to run very hard out of a church. But do you know what? Now when I read the Bible with people, I read it like Becca read it with me. Why do I do that? Because she was a faithful woman of God. And she stuck with me when I was an absolute monkey, when I did things that Christians shouldn't do. She just loved me and kept reading the Bible with me. Copy godly people, guys. Copy godly people. Not necessarily in all aspects of dress, but do copy people who are like Jesus. And the result of copying someone wise and godly is that you won't compare yourself to them. You won't be like, "Oh, I need to be like you." You'll be like, "I need to be like Jesus in you." And that's a beautiful thing. He teaches you to be yourself. And that's what we're meant to authentically be, isn't it? We're not meant to be carbon copies of somebody else. We're meant to be ourselves. And what does that lead to? Well, Paul says, "And the God of peace will be with you." That's the God of peace getting close to you, affirming you, validating you, bringing you joy. That's a good deal. I like that. So thirdly, we're going to look at contentment. Now, contentment, in fact, why don't you ask each other, what do you think contentment means? Have a little chat. You've been very quiet. What is contentment? Okay, so does anyone want to shout out what they think contentment is? Somebody on this side, be brave. I'm a nice lady. Shout out.
Like a baby in a mother's arms.
Ooh, like a baby in a mother's arms, Lizzie said. Thank you. Anyone from this side want to shout out? Be brave. I'm going to pick on you, Sarah. What did you say, Gorge? Oh, okay, interesting. So we've got a baby and we've got neutral. Interesting. What I was thinking today as I was kind of rereading my notes, and I felt God say, contentment is wanting what you already have. Contentment is knowing what you've got is enough, wanting what you already have. And that beautiful picture of a baby in its mother's arms is gorgeous. Place. Paul says in verse 12, "I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learnt the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want." So this is like Paul's contents insurance. This is his contentment package. Now, years ago, we lived in Liverpool. I grew up in Liverpool, but you can't always tell because I've got a bit posher over the years, but I used to have a Scouse accent anyway. And my dad was a vicar, and quite often we used to have people come and live with us or stay with us for periods of time. And there was one guy who came from Kenya, and his name was Onesimus, and he was an absolute legend. This guy was completely incredible. And he came to have meals with us most Sundays for quite a while he was doing a course in Liverpool. And the thing I noticed about him was that he smiled all the time. And he had one of those wraparound smiles. You know, one of them that looks like you've swallowed a piano. It's like, smile. It was just the most amazing, beautiful smile. You up. But he would smile even when he was telling a painful story. He would smile even when he was sharing something difficult in his life. And as a 9-year-old little girl sitting around the table, I was fascinated by him because I was like, what makes you sad? Why are you so strange? Why are you so happy? And I was like, I don't know if I've met that kind of Jesus. I've met the kind of Jesus where you sing in church and you're holding a hymn book, but you've met a Jesus that makes you happy even when you don't have enough food. And there was one day when he came for lunch, and my mum, she had 4 kids, and we all downed the food. And she was putting roast potatoes on our plates. And you know what it's like when you're at home, your mum goes, have another one, have another one. And you're there and you've got your roast potatoes like a mound of destiny. And you're like, oh, and you're about to have it. Do you know, Onesimus kept putting the potatoes back. And I noticed this and I was like, this is strange. Because my brothers were like, bring it on. And I noticed he was putting them back. And my dad noticed it as well. And he quietly kind of said to him over the washing up, can I ask you why you did that? And he said, because I've learnt to live hungry, and I've learnt to live full. And he said, I know I'm going to be hungry over this next week because I don't have very much money. So I don't want my tummy to get the wrong idea. I was like, my goodness me. So this guy, and he said it with a massive grin on his face, by the way. He wasn't like, oh, poor me. He was like, I get to eat today. I might not get to eat tomorrow. And that's okay. And I'm like holding the tea towel going, say what? Like, I don't understand this kind of faith. Paul knew what it was to have that kind of faith. Now, I don't know if he had a wraparound smile, but I do know that he'd learnt to be content in every season of his life. Remember that he's come from a place where he was pretty wealthy. He was like a bit of a bishop in his day. He would have been well-dressed and well-fed. He would have been well-educated. He was a Roman citizen. He kind of had it all going for him. And then he becomes a follower of Jesus. And humanly, it all goes a bit pear-shaped. He starts getting imprisoned and shipwrecked and stuff thrown at him. And yet he's still got that contentment, that peace. I love the fact that he learned that whether he was well-fed or hungry, whether he was living in plenty or in want, he learned that secret, hadn't he, of contentment. So, I think genuinely some of us struggle with being at peace. We struggle because we compare ourselves to other people all the time. And we think, I could be peaceful if I had that car, or if I had that house, or if I had that Instagram feed, or if I had that beautiful new jacket from Boohoo. I could be peaceful then. And some of us believe that our peace is conditional. We believe that if we get something, then we can be at peace. But Paul says, you can be at peace in a prison. You can be at peace when people stone you. You can be at peace when no one's your friend. You can be at peace when people run away. You can be at peace when people don't understand you. You can be at peace when you're alone. And you can be at peace when you're with other people. Not just a peace that like, okay, my dishwasher's mended, my Wi-Fi's back, everything's good. Much deeper peace than that. So if you're the kind of person who says, well, I'll feel more peaceful when I've finished uni, or I'll feel more peaceful when I've got that money back that guy owes me, or when I grow up, or when I graduate, or when I get a girlfriend, or when I sell the house, or when I have my own horse. I don't know what your thing is. She knows who I'm talking about. Until. That's the kind of thing that we say to ourselves. I'll be peaceful when. I'll feel happier when. But this peace that Paul is talking about is not a until I sort out that thing kind. It doesn't need to wait for your life to get simpler or more straightforward, because it's not person-centered peace. It's Jesus-centered peace. And he's always sorted. That peace can attach itself to anyone, at anywhere, at any time. It doesn't need a special holy environment. It doesn't need everyone in the house to be a Christian, and it doesn't need you to have all your ducks in a row, and it doesn't even need to be fully understood. I have read the Bible over and over and seen how much the disciples just did not understand about Jesus. But he wasn't like, okay, so before you follow me, could you turn to page 6 of the Alpha Course? He was just like, come and see. Watch what I do. Learn with me. We don't always have to understand everything he says. God's peace is available for you in what might be a really complex situation. I've spoken to some of you over the last couple of weeks. And some of you are in very complex places right now, emotionally, spiritually, some of you physically. But God's peace is available in that house, in that place, in this season. Aren't you grateful? Aren't you grateful that God's peace is available to us? I said this morning, but I'm going to say it again. The peace that Jesus gives us is available to us when we are at our most unpeaceful. And that's why it exists. So do you want it? Do you want that kind of peace? The peace that says, yeah, I can handle thinking about and focusing on the right things. I can surround myself with people to mimic who are godly. I can be content in every season. John 14:27 says this. It was Jesus talking to his disciples. And he said this, I'm going to give you a present, guys. And it's not a present like the world gives presents. It's not something that is going to die or fade or spoil. It's the present of peace, and it's my peace. And I'm going to give it to you. And I don't want you to try and give it back. I want you to have it. And it's not a present like the world gives, it's yours. So don't let your heart be troubled. And do not be afraid.